Street Fighter V is a game that when many people look back on it, you have mixed thoughts. You have some people that think of it as when it first came out, polarizing, not much was going for it. But then you have other people that think of Street Fighter V in its latter years when it came to be probably one of the best fighting games that you can think of in recent times. It got through all those struggles, it figured everything out, and we got a pretty decent package. But at the end of the day, it's still a polarizing game. And thinking back on this game, it started making me think, why was the game released with people saying that it was a rushed product? Why was it a rushed product? Street Fighter 4 came out in 2009 and Street Fighter 5 actually came out in 2016. That's 7 years, a 7-year gap between Street Fighters, and for some reason people are saying that it was rushed. It doesn't make any sense. How can a game have 7-year window to be released and be made and you're saying it was rushed? But if you go and dig further behind the scenes, you'll start seeing why, this is probably why this game was released the way it was. Now, before, people would tell you, or you would hear that, oh, it's because the Street Fighter X Tekken came out and it was released badly, so it made Capcom have to hurry up and rush, blase blase. But that doesn't really make sense for Capcom. We know with Capcom, they're releasing multiple games in close proximity of time. They're used to having 2, sometimes even 3 fighting games of theirs released all at the same time. I mean, when Street Fighter 4 was out, we had Marvel vs. Capcom along with that, and then, you know, soon after, Street Fighter X Tekken came out. Within a short period of time, they were fine with having 3 Capcom games basically out at the same time. So that's something that you really can't say Capcom messed up on, because they're used to doing that. So it had to have been more than just, oh, Street Fighter X Tekken did bad, so they had to hurry up and put it out. So I dug a little deeper and found a video by the one and only Matt McMuscles that helps us kind of understand why this is, if you've ever thought about that. So if you look right here at the fighting game timeline, you will see that right there in 2009, Street Fighter 4 actually came out. So, and then if you go up to 2010, we see that you got Super Street Fighter 4 and Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition. Then in 2011, you got Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition coming to consoles. And then in 2012, that's when we got Street Fighter X Tekken. So we're basically seeing from 2009 to 2012, that's when you got Street Fighter X Tekken. That's a 3-year space between the time that they were releasing Street Fighter 4 and Street Fighter X Tekken. With this close proximity, you could tell before Street Fighter 4 even came out, probably something they were working on around the same time. So they were fine with having multiple Capcom games out at the same time, and they were probably gonna go along further before they released the next Street Fighter game. Then we see in 2013, there was really no updates, no Street Fighters, nor any Street Fighter X Tekken updates. But then you see in 2014, there's the Ultra Street Fighter 4. So basically, this is 5 years. 5 years between Ultra Street Fighter 4 and Street Fighter 4, the base game. Now, at this point, you're like, man, like Ultra Street Fighter 4 came out. Yes, some people was upset about Atlanta and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, people were still loving that game. That game could have continued on and carried on further into the future. But you see, in the year afterwards, in 2015, we got Street Fighter V. The worldwide beta came out. Next year, Street Fighter V actually got its console release. So basically 7 years between Street Fighter 4 and Street Fighter V. How can you say that this was rushed? Now, you could definitely say it was rushed because right here we got Ultra Street Fighter 4. We just got that in 2014. And then the next year, you got a beta for Street Fighter 5. But also, with 6 months after Ultra Street Fighter 4 actually got released, an announcement at a PlayStation event for Street Fighter 5. So you saw that they were moving on quickly. Once again, why were you moving so fast? Why did you have to move so fast? Ultra Street Fighter 4 is out, people are liking it. Why did you have to hurry up and put out Street Fighter 5 so quickly? But once we dig into these details, you will actually see. Now, if you go back and do your research, you'll actually find out that Street Fighter 5 was actually being worked on all the way back in 2011. Now, why was it being worked on all the way back in 2011? Well, if you remember, in 2013, that's when the PlayStation 4 came out. Capcom wanted to take advantage of the new console coming out and things of that nature, so they wanted to release a Street Fighter around that time of release.
Street Fighter V was actually being developed far longer than most may realize, with the intent to release it nice and early on then next-gen machines. A producer on 5, one Koichi Sugiyama, was interviewed in the Japanese Street Fighter V art book, and in a roundabout way revealed that the game was floundering early on. Street Fighter V was something we've been working on since 2011. All the way up to SF3, the series had been rendered in pixel sprites, but for SF4, the graphics were all done with 3D models, so we had to go through many phases of trial and error in order to nail the same sort of visual impact that the series is known for. For SF5, we were working with Unreal Engine 4, which is known for being particularly good at rendering photorealistic visuals. So once again, we did a lot of experiments. We actually put together a build of SF5 that was rendered in photorealistic graphics, but when we did, we realized that it just wouldn't be Street Fighter without the bold, anime-esque look and feel to the game, so we decided to shelve the whole photorealism idea altogether. I spoke to a source close to Capcom that said this experimental period lasted for a good 2 years. That's 24 months and however much money spent on a pitch that was ultimately scrapped.
Street Fighter 4 came out in 2009, so between 2009 and 2013, around that area, that time frame, maybe even into 2014, they wanted to have another Street Fighter released. Basically, when they was working on Street Fighter V, they actually started working on the design for Street Fighter V, but they had to end up scrapping it because they felt like that it wasn't necessarily going to be true to what Street Fighter was if they kept it going that way. So basically, from 2011 to 2013, they basically wasted time, wasted money. But like we said, PlayStation 4 came out in 2013. So basically that 2-year time that they were working to try to get the next Street Fighter out basically was wasted time. So now it's like you're going all the way back to the drawing board. We're not going to be able to get this out in the time that we wanted to. Basically what they did was they decided they were going to change developers. So by the time they changed developers from who they had originally to this company called Dimps, it's already 2013 and the PS3 is releasing.
The photorealistic build, which was more of a visual test rather than gameplay, was being handled by Polygon Pictures, who Capcom, Ono specifically, had worked with before on various projects. And with that build being thrown out, 5 was then just shuffled back over to Dimps, who had been busy trying to fix Cross Tekken in 2013 and were also developing Ultra Street Fighter 4. This left them very little time to play catch-up, trying to nail a new visual style, as well as, do everything else. Now, with 2 years essentially wasted, the clock was ticking to get the game out in a timely manner to take advantage of next-gen consoles, which were already well underway by 2014. Capcom was always looking for co-marketing deals that would help save costs. Sony was more than willing to play ball, and in exchange for exclusive console rights to Street Fighter V, they'd market the ever-loving out of it.
So to really help speed things up, what they did is they went and sought some co-marketing dollars to help them with the budget that can help them speed things up so much quicker, and that's how we ended up getting Street Fighter V exclusively on PlayStation. Sony was the one that they chose, and Sony, basically with their own interests, they also wanted Street Fighter V to be out on PlayStation 4 as soon as it possibly could. So what does that mean? We need to hurry up and get this game out as quickly as we can. So basically the whole thing that was happening with Street Fighter X Tekken kind of didn't even matter. Yes, it was another incentive that it failed for to hurry up and get another Street Fighter V out, but basically everything that was going on behind the scenes with Street Fighter V was its reason that it had to be released so quickly. It's because of their interest with Sony now coming in and basically putting their money behind it for the market Street Fighter V. But also at the same time, what happened with Dimps, once again, the developers of Street Fighter V, instead of Dimps being able to work with the MT framework, which they had used for Capcom's other games, they had to use the Unreal Engine because they were going to Sony now. So with that also brought in some funny business because Dimps had never used Unreal Engine before. So with them never having to use Unreal Engine before, that was going to cause some issues because once again, things are being rushed. We got to hurry up and get the game out. Sony is a part of this now. And here's some new engine that you never used, but look, we on a time crunch. It don't matter that you ain't never used it. We on a time crunch. So when you hear all this stuff and then saying like, man, if all this stuff was going crazy, if they had all this stuff, you basically scrapped the art design 2 years in, you basically had to change developers, you needed money and all this other stuff. Well, the really pressing issue now was just who they took the money from. That's why the game had to be released so quickly. It's who they took money from. Sony doesn't care anything about, oh well, Ultra Street Fighter 4 is out, that could carry us for a while. No, I want Street Fighter 5 on the console that I'm giving y'all money for. So once again, we see the beta comes out in 2015. People really don't like it. Netcode is terrible. Then the game comes out and people see that like, oh, it's bare bones. It has no story mode. It's basically just slides, even though Capcom said it was gonna be an in-depth cinematic story mode. There's really just nothing but basically the characters you can fight in different colors. That's basically it. And that's how we get to the point to where Street Fighter 5 had came out and it was basically just trash, for a back with a little term. It was just trash. And basically Capcom basically said they knew that the game was kind of going to be released in that state, but with them basically moving into a live service model instead of just releasing, you know, different games over and over again, they basically said that basically they can fix it.
The source I spoke to explains why the game came out the way it did. I think the Capcom Pro Tour and the fiscal year cutoff, March 31st, 2016, were the main factors there, with the understanding that SF5 would always be an evolving product with a lot of free updates coming down the line, meaning that theoretically, any initial backlash would have been mitigated. Eerie coincidence with Cross Tekken there. That game's whole on-disc DLC fiasco only occurred because Capcom wasn't willing to miss the end of their fiscal year cutoff, something most companies wouldn't risk. So the lack of content for 5 could be chalked up to, we'll have to do it later.
And so that leads us to where we are with Street Fighter 5 now. It basically came out that way. They fixed it in the end like they said that they would, but it still left a sour taste in people's mouth. Now the game actually came out successful. It's one of the top 10 best-selling fighting games of all time. So, I mean, at the end of the day, they got a W, but still for us as a community, it basically puts us in a situation to where like, man, how do we rank Street Fighter 5? And basically me, I can't put Street Fighter 5 as one of the top 5 Street Fighter games of all time, even though it's one of the most recent Street Fighter games. I mean, basically at this point, I got Street Fighter 6 ahead of Street Fighter 5. It took Street Fighter 5 basically to the end of its life cycles for people to basically be like, man, this is really one of the better Street Fighter games of all time. So overall, as a package, Street Fighter 5 kind of went through it, man. I mean, for a while we had that game and it was just not what we wanted it to be. It was just not what people was hoping for. People for so long was playing Street Fighter 5 and was just like, I can't wait for Street Fighter 6. I can't wait for Street Fighter 6. I can't wait for Street Fighter 6 for a very long time. So if you guys did or didn't know this, how do you guys feel about it? Y'all let me know in the comment section down below.